This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and super happy to have in the studio with me the executive director of Social Security Works, the owner and producer of We Act Radio, socialsecurityworks.org, of course, the website. Alex Lawson, the brilliant Alex Lawson, ALaw202 is his Twitter handle, and the website is socialsecurityworks.org.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Alex, for joining us.
Thank you, Tom.
So, big news in the pharmaceutical realm.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about this.
It's big submerged news, which, as you know, oftentimes a lot of the worst stuff that happens in this town happens and no one even knows it's happening, right? It's where the lobbyists hang all of the terrible things. So bear with me on this one, but the FDA reauthorization, so the funding for the FDA, who regulate all the drugs, is actually a process. It's a user fee process. So it's the pharmaceutical industry itself funds the FDA through these things called user fees. They come up every 5 years, and it's usually a grab bag of giveaways for pharma because it's what's called a must pass, right? In this town, that's where you hang things because it has to pass or the FDA shuts. That just happened last week. It went through, and it was a really interesting showdown. Social Security Works, we've been working on this for over a year to keep a giveaway out of this process. I know you know this, but monopoly power is how the pharmaceutical companies rip us off, right? They charge these insane prices because they can, right? Because they have government-granted monopolies or they act in criminal collusion. There's a bunch of ways they do it, but it's always monopoly power. When it is a patent, what they are always going for is extending that exclusivity, right? So they say, oh, give me 6 more months for this or 6 more months for that.
Strengthening the penalties.
Right. And in trade deals, right, going in and eviscerating other countries' ability to have generics. This one, the Open Act, was the latest version of extending the exclusivity. So they say, oh, it's for orphan drugs, it's for research into treating rare and orphan diseases, which sounds good. But at the last count, 75% of drugs on the market qualify for this orphan status, right? So you're like, no, I don't think that's what it's about. It's a giveaway. Right. But the interesting thing, pharma is so reviled right now that when we were walking around the Hill, we've been doing grassroots, grass tops, as much pressure as we can to keep this out. And there was a lot of nodding along. I do not want to be seen as giving anything to pharma right now.
It seems, just looking at this politically, and then I want to get back to the, what's actually going on, and I want to talk about these share buybacks. Mm-hmm. But it seems to me that there was an inflection point in the last year, and that was when Cory Booker supported or voted against the ability of Americans to import drugs from Canada and other countries, but Canada would be the major supplier. And was doing so apparently because he was taking big money from the pharmaceutical industry. He took so much flack for that he changed his position. He publicly came out and trashed the industry that had been funding him. Obviously, the guy wants to be president of the United States, and he's noticing which way the wind blows, which I think is great. I want my politicians to say, oh, I shouldn't have done that, and I'm going to change my position when it's in a positive direction. But I'm guessing a whole lot of other politicians, particularly in the Democratic Party, looked at the serious flack that Cory Booker got and said, I don't want that happening to me.
I just extending that slightly, because I think you're completely right. And that we saw that in this UFA fight. Sorry, the user fee is shorthanded here, UFA. Sure. Yeah. I want to point a couple more things out, though. Cory Booker then promised he wasn't going to take any money from the pharmaceutical industry, right? Which, as you said, it's a good thing. But the magnitude of that, I think, escapes people a little bit, because that'd be like Chuck Schumer saying he wasn't going to take any money from Wall Street.
Right. These are the biggest donors.
In New Jersey, especially, pharmaceutical companies, New Jersey is their backyard. Right. And for decades, literally decades, it has not been a bad thing for Democrats to take pharmaceutical industry money. They would defend
It's the
it.
hometown industry in New Jersey.
Exactly. And they would defend it. But even nationally, it was not looked at as a bad. Their money did not.
Because they're saving lives.
And innovation. And they're a great American innovator. And But then what we've seen is that they're not. They're not doing innovation. That, they're Martin Shkreli now. And people are so mad about their drug prices.
And Heather Bresch.
And exactly. Mylan and the EpiPen. Now their money is tainted, and the magnitude of Cory Booker taking that flack and then saying, I'm not going to take any more money from the industry is huge. And that's why we have to push this advantage. We have to make it really toxic to be associated with the pharmaceutical industry.
Right. And meanwhile, let me just, I've been talking about this a lot lately to our audience, to our people watching, listening to the program. The scam that senior executives have been playing ever since Reagan changed the rules on executive compensation. It used to be prior to the 1980s, you couldn't compensate somebody with stock. The tax code didn't allow for it. In fact, the tax code excluded it. And Reagan changed that. Reagan and the Republicans changed that. And the Democrats, frankly, as well, with this whole ownership society idea. And so now CEOs and senior executives seem to be far more concerned about the value of the stock than the quality or the value of the product that their company is producing. And case in point, the pharmaceutical industry. This is from Zero Hedge. Big pharmaceutical companies have spent more on share buybacks in a recent 10-year period than they did on research and development. And of course, share buybacks are where you have the company take its own profits and buy its own stock in the open market, reducing the number of total shares available, which increases the price of every single share that is available, even though you didn't make the company stronger, you didn't develop a new product, you didn't invent a blockbuster new drug. All you did was take the company from having 17 million shares outstanding to 15 million shares outstanding, but every share of stock is now worth $3 more than they used to be. So when you cash in your stock options, you make an extra $1 million. Mm-hmm. This is an absolute scam. From 2006 to 2015, the 18 drug companies in the S&P 500 index spent a combined $516 billion on share buybacks and dividends. $500 billion. They only spent $465 billion on R&D. And most of that R&D is not really R&D. It's being done in our universities. You want to riff on that for a second?
Definitely. I mean, this is shocking. It's not shocking to me because I saw this. I came to D.C. after learning how bad this industry was, working in clinics. And my job was paperwork to get clients the drugs that they were prescribed by their doctors, which was impossible. It was so complex and Byzantine because the prices were outrageous, but no one could even tell you what the prices were. At the same time, these pharmaceutical reps would come in, very nice, and they just give away all this stuff. And the thing for me, I was working in an outreach HIV clinic in Chicago, and it was so hard. Our clients were faced with very difficult situations, and the pharma rep brought me a self-stirring coffee mug. Branded with their brand because using a spoon was too difficult, right? And I was like, why don't you just make the drugs affordable?
Right.
Because I thought they were in the business of, right, you picture them in lab coats. You picture drug companies as lab coats. It's completely wrong, and it hasn't been that way basically since Reagan. Picture them as bankers. They're wearing $6,000 suits, and they are not looking to create new things. What they're looking for are opportunities where they can jack the price up. So they look at old things, buy them, and then jack the price up. And then they have an army of marketers. That's mainly what they do. They don't do research and development.
And lawyers to keep competitors out there. And now this latest scam, I was just reading about this in either the New York Times or the Financial Times last night, as I recall, is that it's getting harder and harder to get generic drugs. Your doctor prescribes a generic drug for you. You go to the pharmacy. The pharmacy says, I'm sorry, United Healthcare won't pay for the generic drug. You have to buy the full price retail drug, the brand name drug. So instead of a $10 prescription, you now have a $50 prescription. Oh, and by the way, your insurance doesn't cover the first $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 or whatever it may be. So you have to pay for this out of pocket. Turns out the reason why the insurance company, which seems to make no sense, why do they want to require you to buy a more expensive drug? Turns out they're getting such huge kickbacks from the drug companies that they're actually making a profit on the brand name drugs through the kickbacks, and you're the one who's paying the price through your out-of-pocket portion of it. And so the insurance companies are making more money requiring you to use brand name drugs than they would if you were using cheaper generics because of this whole kickback scheme. This seems to me like something that should involve a RICO prosecution.
I couldn't agree more. RICO would be one way of going. FTC should definitely smash the collusion that goes on, right? I mean, an industry is not allowed to do that. But
well, they're doing it.
Exactly.
They've
They've
gotten
gotten
away with it.
United
Healthcare was the name. Was the company that was called out in this. I'm pretty sure it was the New York Times article.
It was New York Times.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's totally true. And that's like, I'm not exaggerating. That's like the least of their terrible behavior. That's like just accepted. They created a whole industry, the PBMs, the pharmacy benefit managers, a whole like cutout industry whose job it is to work with the insurance companies to create these upward like price pressures as long as you pay for it, right? So they use complex rebate schemes, which are kickbacks. But, you know, they're like, oh, no, you don't know how much the drug costs because we use rebates and very few people actually pay the full price of the drug. And you're like, yeah, that's the problem. We don't know what the drug costs and who pays what.
Well, not only that, the rebate's going to the insurance company
Exactly.
rather than to me.
Exactly.
So the insurance company is pushing me to use my out-of-pocket money to buy the more expensive drug.
Let me add one thing in there that is touched on, but there are gag rules on pharmacists from pointing out that sometimes, like they see it, and that your deductible is going to be higher than if you just bought the drug over the counter without using your insurance, and they are not allowed to tell you that because this industry is not a bunch of people.
Wait a minute, are you saying that if I go in and I have a prescription and I buy a drug and the guy says, okay, it's $50 as a deductible against your insurance, and I say, I don't want my insurance to pay for it, just let me buy the drug, it'll only be $30?
Yes, that not deductible though. It's where's it deductible? I'm sorry.
The out-of-pocket portion.
The out-of-pocket portion, it can be higher than if you just don't use your insurance and you
at all.
And they know it. Pharmacists can see that, but they're not allowed by
contract,
by policy to do so.
Amazing. Alex Lawson, the executive director of Social Security Works, socialsecurityworks.org. ALaw202 is his Twitter handle. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, Tom.